Hey, bonjour.
Yes.
Ça va bien?
Come on in.
How are you doing?
Good, good. You?
I'm very good. Nice to meet you, Assisi.
Okay.
I love it. This is awesome. Woo! Took a while to get here. Nice, great, awesome.
So, is it a long ride from Cyclone?
A little bit.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. So for the next photograph, it's what's great is that when you look at it, it's very flat in the sense that because of the composition, it was done at basically high noon. It's of a forest. You can the cleared ground. There are a couple of concrete things that are kind of cleared off. Hard to know what those concrete things. It could be benches, but they're quite low to the ground. There's a kind of it's just a big sort of an empty clearing or forest scene. If I look closely, the trees kind of look like trees in Hong Kong. So it's like subtropical. Yeah, if I were to put my life down to it, I'd say it was in Hong Kong. But yeah, so what is this photograph? It's called Truth and Healing.
Yes. Right. Oh, well, perfect. I was just talking about truth and healing, right? So I love your sense of observation.
Oh, okay.
And let's see how you react to this. This is the cemetery of the South Vietnamese soldiers in Vietnam.
Okay, so this is in Vietnam.
This is in Vietnam, okay. Right.
So I got the foliage okay.
And you can see there are like 3 types of tombstones.
Right.
Right. To the right there, you have one that's a little red, and it seems like there has been some incense that was burned.
Yeah.
So that is tombstone that has been visited.
Okay.
Right? Whereas you have other types of tombstones. Here when you say there is concrete that seems cracked.
It's just slabs.
It's just slabs, yeah. And with time, roots and everything have made it, have broken them.
Oh, wow.
And you see right next to it is just an earth mound. So those ones don't even have a slab on top
please
anymore.
Don't tell me this is like a cemetery divided by political...
So this is the story of me trying to find the truth.
Okay.
But never really finding it.
Wow.
So I've heard a lot of stories about this cemetery, that it was damaged by those who won the war, or that it was closed off to the public and people couldn't go visit anymore, or that it was still open but people were terrified of going to visit because then you associate yourself with the South.
Okay.
And so...
this is South Vietnam?
Yes.
Okay.
And so a lot of these went into a state of disrepair, as you can see.
Sure.
Right? That's why you say this is a park or a forest and foliage. Yeah, but you barely see the stones anymore. And so I always said, okay, I want to go visit this place so that I get down to the truth of it, what happened to it. And if I'm about to write something about it, I need to, A, see it, and 2, I don't want to write something just hearsay. I want to know what really happened. Right? This is a bit my method. So when I used to do theater, I used to really be into it. I remember doing a scene about a girl in Yukon, and she was drinking gin, really cold in Yukon, middle of winter, outside. And it was December, January in Montreal, and I bought myself gin. Never drank gin before in my life. Yeah. Went out to the park past midnight, drank gin to have a feeling of what it's like to be freezing and drinking gin. Right. So this is, bringing this to the writing is, okay, I have to really go to this place.
What a beautifully Canadian example.
So back to the tropical scenery. So I came there, and this is what I saw. Like I said again, in the photography, I don't take good pictures, right? So you can barely see much in this picture. The lighting is terrible. But I did want to...
Unless this is actually exactly the best photograph for that place in that moment.
Right, maybe.
You know what I mean? Like in some ways, it's... If we put the value judgment of, well, aesthetically, how does it land? Well, maybe the aesthetics of it land just right. Because as an observer, what you saw me reacting to it was precisely that yeah, this is a cemetery that has been neglected, whatever. And how does this honor the history or whatever? So, if anything, it's a perfect photograph. You mean like?
Thank you. So I wasn't thinking of that in the moment.
Sure.
When I took it, I was actually a bit terrified. I was wondering if I was allowed to take this picture or not. But it made me really sad, that these people don't even have names anymore.
Right.
And their slabs are broken, who knows by what. And, I've visited other cemeteries of those who fought for the winning side.
Yeah.
And it's like there's the word lirché on everything, meaning like national hero. And, it's tragic for everyone. But depending on which side you are on, it determines whether or not anyone cares about you after you die or not.
Yeah.
And so this is me trying to find truth but not finding it. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, maybe that's not what's important. But what's important is to be able to move on from here.
Okay.
Like, how do we move on from this? And that's hard. It's hard because the part of me, after all, I did go into law. There's the part of me that's more vindicative, that wants, to have the truth out there, to tell, what is right, what is wrong.
Okay.
But then sometimes when you can't do that, or sometimes it no longer serves the purpose that you want. If the purpose is to reconcile and for healing, then holding on very tightly to you were wrong or we were right or whatever, it doesn't serve the purpose anymore.
Right.
So it made me really sad, but it's like, okay, well, maybe we just have to move on from it and just say that it was a terrible national tragedy.
Yeah.
But still, it doesn't totally sit right either.
No.
So, when I write, there's always those two voices talking to me. Like, sometimes I'm more in the direction of wanting to prove a point. And then after, when I read back, I'm like, well, maybe not, maybe you have to go into the direction that is more about coming together and trying to work out that pain so that something like this doesn't happen again and that we don't cause this type of pain to each other again.
Sure.
Right? But those are the two voices that totally, that sometimes still come into conflict with each other.
Right.
Like when recently, for this podcast, I looked up online, what's the cemetery called so that I could tell you. And it's called now Bình An, which means peace. Okay. The Peace Cemetery. And so my first reaction was
different than what you're describing.
Yeah, so my first reaction was, well, that's hypocritical. Right? Why would you call it that when, we haven't reconciled, we're still not through with, we haven't found inner peace about what happened to the cemetery. How can you call it peace? But then the other voice said, well, maybe that's a stepping stone in the right direction, and that's what we should aim for. Right. So that's part of what I sometimes struggle with when I write. Sure. What kind of intention do I want? And that intention actually seeps into everything, right? Into all of my decision making when I write. Like, what kind of characters do I want them? So, sometimes you make one character too much of a victim. You're like, well, no, actually, they also have agency in it. They're not just a victim. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, and you don't want either to put some other characters as villains because of your own personal anger. That, for the reader, just, that character loses credibility because we're all human. So I have to always remind myself to keep in mind that it's not about right or wrong. It's something bigger. Right. And when I remind myself of that, then I can make more rounded and realistic characters.
Right. I'm going to leave that to sit. And I'm going to move on to the next photo.
All right.
Okay. Because it's a lot. And we could easily talk about these things and these important deep themes, for a long time. And my main response to that is maybe in your training by in law it tends to be a kind of one versus the other, this or that, or these two voices, or these two, as opposed to in my head how I see it or hear it, or it's 100 people arguing. Nobody's right, everybody's wrong, unhappy, happy, contradicting, conflicting. Maybe that's just how I hear. So
right, and that comes through with your podcast, right? Bringing all of these voices to the table.
Yeah, kind of schizophrenic, but hey, well, something will come out. So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen, and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.